All right, hey everyone, we're going to start in 2 minutes. So just give us 2 minutes and we'll hop back on audio. We'll leave the video feed up, but I'll hop back on the audio in 2 minutes. Thank you. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. Really excited about today's webinar. We're going to be talking about how we can control an iPhone with only the use of your eyes. So we are joined by Matt Moss, the founder, creator, and CEO of Hawkeye Access. So we're going to get started by introducing Matt and let him just talking about Hawkeye a little bit, how it got started, his interesting path to creating this app, and kind of a little what it does and the future of it. So I'll let you take it away, Matt. Maybe you can just start off by telling us what Hawkeye is.
Much for having me here. So Hawkeye Access is an iOS app that lets you control your device using your eyes. So it's all powered by the True Depth camera on newer iOS devices. So this is the same kind of technology that powers Face ID. And we use this information to figure out where you look on the screen. As you move your eyes around, different buttons highlight. And our app lets you browse any website hands-free. So you can, browse the web, you can use social media, you can check the weather, you can do kind of more in professional use cases like Google Docs and things like that. And it's all works hands-free. You just look around the website, you can scroll, tap, anything that you could do otherwise.
That's awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about what got you started with Hawkeye? I know you mentioned that at first it wasn't meant for like disability only, but it became such a powerful product. It kind of took you there.
So a student, actually, I go to UC Santa Barbara in California, and Apple has this great student developer program where you can make a little demo project, submit it to them, and then if they pick you, you get to attend their developer conference, WWDC, for free, along with 350 other students from around the world. So I've done that for a couple of years now, and back in 2018, when I was attending the conference, Apple launched a bunch of kind of enhanced face tracking features, all based around the True Depth camera on their devices. And while I was at the conference, I kind of had the idea to use some of this information to figure out where our user was looking on their screen. So I hacked together a pretty rough prototype over 2 or 3 days at the conference. And and ended up tweeting out a little video of it. And at the time I had something like, 70 Twitter followers, like definitely a complete Twitter nobody, but somehow it just kind of, blew up on Twitter and got like 300,000 views within, 2-3 weeks, which was really kind of a pretty surreal experience. But after that, I kind of started thinking about if there was something, more to the project than just a 3-day, hack together thing. And from Twitter, the kind of most meaningful use case I thought of was accessibility. So people were super excited about how it could help people control their devices. So I decided to spend the rest of that summer from school building Hawkeye Access, and then ended up releasing that app in kind of late 2018, and have been working on it ever since. So
Yeah, that's great. So like he said, Matt's still a student, but I think I can speak for him here that student is his second job and making Hawkeye a real thing is his first job. So thank you for that, Matt. Could you talk a little bit about kind of like where Hawkeye is heading? What's the future? What can you let us know about what's coming down the path?
yeah, so one of the things I'm most excited about, which we launched fairly recently, was keyboard support on the iPad. So right now, in order to enter text on the iOS version of Hawkeye, you kind of dictate speech. Whereas on the iPad, now that there's kind of bigger devices with bigger screens that have the same kind of true depth camera technology, we can actually put an eye controllable keyboard up on the screen. So you can just look at different letters, select them by smiling, blinking, or holding your gaze. And I'm pretty excited about, ways that we could use that keyboard for web browsing, for communication, and all sorts of other things going forward.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Oh, a quick note, if you all have any questions throughout the webinar, just put them in the chat box and we'll get to them at the end. Also, if you have a disability and you think you can benefit from this app, Matt and I are going to be giving away a 6-month license. Hawkeye's free, but I'll let Matt expand on this in a second. But we're also going to give away another RAM mount to mount your cell phone. And can you just expand a little bit upon what this 6-month subscription is with the user testing, Matt?
Yeah, so accessibility is kind of half of the Hawkeye business at this point. We also do some user research and user testing work. So if you're a designer or a researcher or a developer or something like that, and you want to learn where people look in images, in websites, that kind of thing, you can use our eye tracking to generate heat maps, screen recordings, all sorts of other things to show where people look in your products. And while Hawkeye Access is free, that product does cost some money, so we thought it'd be fun to give away a 6-month subscription in case anyone's interested in trying it out.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's super cool. Maybe I can twist your arm to give me one too, or maybe I can select myself as the winner. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all good stuff. So we're going to give an attempt at me actually demonstrating Hawkeye on my cell phone and kind of how it works. And Matt will provide some commentary. We were having some issues with my screen sharing, so it might not work. We may just show videos, but we'll see how it goes.
The Hawkeye app.
Yeah, screen share. Okay, here we go. So I wonder if, looks like I'm starting halfway through, but anyways, go ahead and talk about our eye tracking here, Matt.
Yeah, so we have a basic calibration process where you look at a bunch of different dots on the screen. As you look at the dot, a little ring will appear around it to kind of show your completion. And then once the dot has moved all around the screen, and then the calibration is complete, and then you can control your device using your eyes. So this is the kind of last step of the calibration here.
And I know you have some helpful hints on the Hawkeye website for calibration, is that right?
Yep, so we have tips both in the app and on our website for how to get the best calibration. Now that's done, you can see the cursor has appeared on the screen. You can smile, blink, or hold your gaze to select elements. So you can see that here. We got smile selection, we got stare selection, blink selection. So we're on smile selection right now.
Yep.
If you either look, you can, as you hover over different UI elements, they'll automatically highlight, so it's super easy to select things on the device. And then if you look at this, go ahead.
So for me, I turn the sensitivity way down. Any advice for a first-time user, any of these settings? So let's start with selection mode. What do you think would be the easiest one to start with?
think smile selection is probably the easiest to get started with. It's compared to blink or holding your gaze, that definitely requires a little more focus, especially for holding your gaze. You have to be able to kind of hold the cursor over a UI element for the duration of the selection process, whereas with smile, you just hover over it, smile, and you're good. And then, as you mentioned, sensitivity is the other big one as well. So the app kind of starts at a medium setting where the cursor will move fairly rapidly as you move your eyes, but you can scale that sensitivity way down, so it's a lot easier to control.
Yep. And so text dictation, if you had a iPad, we could switch this to keyboard, right?
Exactly.
Cool. So one of the things I noticed and I thought was super cool about this is, for whatever reason, wherever you're pulling your speech files seem to be more accurate than even iOS. Has anyone ever mentioned that before?
Yeah. I mean, we're pretty dependent on iOS at this point for our dictation, but I think clear audio is definitely the biggest helper there. So if you can do it without a lot of background noise and that sort of thing, then the dictation's really pretty good at this point. And because it's not really trying to interpret what you're saying, it's just trying to do speech to text. It's pretty accurate at this point, which is really good.
Cool.
So yeah, you can see you can open up a website. So we've opened up the web browser there. We have a bunch of bookmarks for kind of the most commonly accessed sites, like your social media sites, that sort of thing. You can see something like espn.com.
Yep. So I'll add that
then,
as a bookmark. I just look at the bottom of the screen, I believe.
Yep. We also have kind of hot corners on the sides of the display. So if you look at the bottom left, as Tyler just did, then a little bookmark icon pops up. You can smile and then you add it as a bookmark. Just like that.
Back to home is here. And then scroll.
Yep. So instead of having to kind of find a very small little home button or scroll button, you just look at the edge of the device. So you want to scroll down, you just look at the bottom of the screen, a little scroll icon pops up, you just smile and you scroll. So it's a lot easier to use because you have the whole of the bottom of the screen to work with, more so than just a little button somewhere.
And then when we find our article, just kind of scroll down here. Wait for one that's not a video. Okay, here we go. So when it lights up, that means we can click. Same old scrolling.
Once you hover over any HTML element or any button on the screen, you just smile to click. Super simple.
Cool. And then we can look at the left side of the screen, go back, and then go back home.
Another easy gesture.
Yeah, and this is super easy to use. Like, I haven't been practicing with this for months or anything, so it's really user intuitive, and I think pretty much anyone can use it. I think maybe the most important thing is just getting the settings calibrated. So we can move to the next bookmark page and over again.
So again, just look at the side of the screen to scroll. Super easy. You have the whole side of the screen to work with. So again, not looking for a little button.
Very cool. All right, let's go ahead and go back home here. And maybe what we'll do is we'll just demonstrate some of the other selection modes so everyone can just get a feel for that. So let's start with blink next. Oops. There we go. Do you have any recommendations for in our blink, like duration or anything there?
So the standard value normally works. All the blink duration's trying to do is kind of filter out natural blinks. So instead of kind of picking up super fast blinks like you might do naturally, it kind of depends on a more deliberate blink where you kind of hold your eyes closed for a little longer than you normally would. Not so much that you're kind of closing your eyes at any point, just holding them shut a little bit more than a normal blink. And that way, as you're just browsing website normally, your natural blinks aren't going to be firing click events. So depending on how often you blink and how long your natural blink is, then you can change the settings so that it filters out blink correctly.
Cool. Yeah, super easy. Just scrolling along. Blink. scroll, go back, and go home. So when I was playing around with this, it seemed like when I did stare, that was the one that I had to do the most like, modifications with, Is that normal or was that just me?
Air is definitely a lot more difficult to use. We wanted to include it just because it's kind of the minimal amount of functionality needed to use the app, right? So if all you can do is move your eyes, then stare works for you, even if controlling your blink is challenging or smiling is challenging. But that being said, it's definitely the hardest to use because when you look at a UI element, a little progress bar will appear, and it only clicks after that progress bar completes. So if you're moving around a little bit or your eyes aren't super steady, then maybe the cursor moves off of the button before it finishes selecting.
Yeah, I think that just happened to me there. But what I could do is I could just make the stare longer. So if I know I can't like scroll down fast enough, we just change the stare settings, which is super easy to do. So I will do that real quick. And we just need to bump that up. So that would be stare selection duration. And then you could always have your caretaker, whomever, help you with the settings rather than trying to do it yourself. How about positioning for these, Matt? So I've always wondered, let's say I don't have the phone positioned like right in front of my face. If I put it at an angle, would it essentially do the same thing? Or any thoughts on just getting it in the right spot?
So there's definitely a fair amount of flexibility there. The key is just to calibrate again if you ever move the phone, so that it does dial in correctly. But as far as kind of vertical positioning goes, it's very flexible. So you can have it kind of at eye level, or you can have it a little below as well. Off to the side, if your face is kind of pointed towards the phone, it should be perfectly accurate. If your face is quite off-centered, it should still work pretty well. The calibration definitely might be a little more challenging. This is actually one of the things we're working on right now. Got a bunch of ideas for how calibration can kind of take into account off-centered head positions and correct for that. So I'll definitely follow up once that's working as well.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, we'll include all of these links at the end here. Hawkeye's website, where to find the app in the App Store, and all of that type of stuff. So do you ever foresee this going to Android? Do they have the proper camera on it?
So that's the big limitation right now. All of this is based around the true depth camera on the iPhone. And while some Android devices have some similar kind of face unlock features on their phones, most of them aren't actually doing this through, an infrared, pretty advanced camera like the iPhone is. So that makes it pretty challenging to do the eye tracking on Android devices right now. But I think this technology is only becoming more and more popular. So I think it's only a matter of time before at least the more high-end Android phones have the same kind of cameras.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead. And for those of people who are verbal, let's try this. Oh, never mind. I'll cancel this and start over. So I'll let you kind of just talk through the speech recognition as I do it, please, Matt.
That's good. I'll try and make sure I don't interfere with the speech itself.
Yeah, I know. Hawkeye Access. Nope, did we lose Team Viewer? All right, we lost Team Viewer. Pretty much what you were going to see there is just me clicking on the address bar, and it pulls up a little thing that says, go ahead and talk now. So like I said, it's been incredibly accurate for me, even with my passwords, which is great because those are a pain, as everyone knows. So yeah, any thoughts just on the speech recognition other than it's kind of reliant upon the files it pulls from the phone itself?
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely the easiest way to browse the web, even more so than a keyboard normally, because instead of having to type out what you're searching for, you just say it, within a second, it automatically completes. You don't even have to click like a done button. It just, detects once you finish speaking automatically and then searches for it. And as Tyler mentioned, it works for like passwords and things like that as well. So you can say full words, but you can also spell out letters and characters and things like that. So you could say, like capital A, B, C, or whatever, and it would type that. So for passwords, that's super useful.
Yeah. Maybe for an iPhone tip in general. So it was my understanding that iPhone recognizes words that are in it. So a lot of iPhone, you can program in your own commands. Do you know what I'm talking about, Matt?
Yeah, totally. So in the iOS settings, you can kind of predefine certain terms, I believe. And because we use the kind of core iOS speech detection software, the same settings you do for your phone should also work within Hawkeye. So if you add, it's called a dictionary or whatever, right? If you add a word to your dictionary on your iPhone, then it'll work in Hawkeye as well.
All right. And then if anyone's out there who could benefit from the Hawkeye, please remember to raise your hand. So yeah, so Hawkeye also works with Mac OS, but through the head tracking. Can you expand on that a little, Matt?
Yeah, so kind of ever since I first started working on Hawkeye Access for iOS, I've always wanted to do something similar for the Mac. Like obviously I do all of my work on the Mac, like all my coding and design, everything that goes into making Hawkeye Access is done on the Mac. So I kind of know firsthand how powerful it is to be able to use a Mac. So I wanted to do a similar product for the Mac. The big difference between the version of Hawkeye Access for iPhone and Hawkeye Access for the Mac is the Mac version depends on head tracking over eye tracking. And this is mainly just because the Mac has super small little buttons. So iOS is all designed to be used, for touch more or less, right? So the buttons are big, they're bulky, they're quite easy to control using eye control because of that. The Mac's kind of a whole different story. Like you've got tiny buttons all around the screen. And the eye tracking is definitely more challenging to use for that level of accuracy. Whereas head tracking, where you just kind of rotate your head around like this and the cursor on the screen follows, that's nearly perfectly accurate. So it's only accurate enough to how slowly you're able to move your head. So with that, you rotate your head to move the mouse around the screen. You can perform different expressions to trigger different actions. So you can, smile to click. You can make it so as you raise your eyebrows like this, the page scrolls. You can do fun things like puckering your lips like that to right click. And you can assign these expressions dynamically. So if there are common actions you do on your computer, like go into a full screen view or something like that, or change the volume or mute your mic or something, you can map different facial expressions to those actions, so you don't have to go and press the button every single time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you do need the the iPhone with the true in-depth camera, but it should work on any MacBook that's relatively new, like a 2017, 2018, 2019 MacBook.
So that's definitely an important thing to keep in mind. So the way the app works right now is it actually pairs with your iPhone. And this is because we want to use the same true depth camera that we use for the eye tracking on the iOS device. And Macs don't really have that kind of hardware yet. So if you just prop your phone up kind of next to your laptop or use a mount, the iPhone just connects to your laptop automatically over Bluetooth and then uses the phone's super advanced camera to do all of the accurate tracking while letting you control your Mac.
Awesome. So do you foresee the MacBook ever having its like own iGuys stuff in there? I mean, will they ever let you put an app on there, or maybe they don't have the camera and that's what's happening?
Yeah, so mainly it's the camera right now. The other really nice thing about building apps for the Mac is you can do system-wide control. So on iOS, we're kind of limited to running eye tracking, within the Hawkeye Access app, and that's mainly for security reasons on iOS, amongst other things. But on the Mac, once you install an app, you can kind of control system-wide. So all you have to do is install the Hawkeye Access app, and then you can control, Safari, iMovie. You could run this webinar, for instance, all using head control, which is super cool. And the same would go for eye tracking. So I think as accuracy gets better on the iPhone, which we're really hoping it will, and are putting a lot of work into, then we'd be able to offer similar kind of gaze control on the Mac. And we'd also be able to do it system-wide with every single app automatically that you have on your computer.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things I noticed when I was researching for this webinar is they have something called the Toby for Windows. But when it comes to iOS devices, I think you're like the trailblazer here, Matt. Do you think this will continue to grow the field of eye gaze, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally. So as you mentioned, kind of existing eye tracking hardware providers like Toby, there are a number of others as well. They're mainly focused on Windows, and they're mainly focused on kind of selling dedicated hardware products. So in order to use a Toby tracker, you have to, buy an eye tracker, right, from them, and it costs thousands of dollars normally. It's quite difficult to get set up if you're just experimenting with the technology. It's a big commitment to drop
Yeah.
$1,000 or whatever just to try it out. So that's where I think the iOS eye tracking is a huge advantage, right? So if you want to try Hawkeye, not only is it a free download, but all you have to do is go to the App Store and press download, right? And then you have eye tracking. You can try it out, and you can see if it's a good fit for you. Instead of sending off $5,000 and waiting weeks for it to turn up, and then only to find out that maybe eye gaze isn't what you want, or it isn't working quite right. So yeah, I'm really excited about getting as many people as possible testing out eye tracking and trying it for the first time. And there's a whole group of people who never would use kind of a legacy Toby product, but would be totally fine trying out Hawkeye.
Right, and I'm almost 99% sure Toby doesn't even interface with iOS. And
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a little personal anecdote. So while I am verbal, so like my main form of communication doesn't have to be eye tracking. I can communicate by voice or whatever. One of the things I noticed is whenever I had friends come over and we were all like watching a football game or something, and I always noticed they were on their phones interacting with their device. And I'm thinking, well, I can start yelling at my phone. It's not going to hear a thing I say because there's so much background noise. The Hawkeye app really allows me to kind of interact with my device like everyone else, even when there's background noise, which I think is just fantastic. So, I mean, restaurants, anything like that, it gives you a way to kind of, interact the same way as anyone else. So, I mean, this is awesome, Matt. Really cool app for sure.
Where the keyboard's pretty interesting as well. There's kind of that extra level of privacy as well, right? So dictation works a lot of the time, but if you have an iPad and can use an eye controllable keyboard, then nobody has to hear what you're saying to your computer, right? You can just type it out all with your eyes. So
or even, I mean, just even if you're only using the iPhone, it still would be nice to check your fantasy football score, at least in my case. And I don't need to type anything out for that. I can, when it's quiet, I can put everything in. So, my passwords are saved, and then, go about my business. So that's perfect. All right. Well, I think we're going to do some questions. Oh, actually, one more thing, Matt. I know I'm going to end up with questions about your accent because I'm supposed to be doing a verbal, webinar here, and no one's going to want to hear me talk ever again after you. So you got to let us know where you got your accent.
Yeah, so it's kind of a complicated story. So my family is kind of English originally, but kind of grew up here and whatnot in California. So it's kind of half and half at this point, right? Like definitely not a full English accent, but any American would tell you I don't sound quite right. So it's just kind of all over the place at this point, but we're just going with it. So
right on, man. All right, so questions, and we have no Colin this week. So the director, Victor, as you guys have probably seen popping in and out before, is going to go ahead and let him rip.
All right. So our first question is from Tiffany Fox. She says, I would definitely benefit from this, smiley face. I'm a C4 complete quadriplegic. How long has this been around?
Version of the Hawkeye Access app hit the App Store in, I believe, November of 2018. So yeah, fairly new. We're definitely still improving it quite a lot. But we've also kind of had the time to build out some cool features, which is nice. So it's not just kind of V1 very experimental. We've definitely had a chance to test it out a little bit more at this point.
That's awesome. All right, next question.
Okay, this one comes from Vicky P. Thank you, Mr. Moss, for your exceptional work. I'm just wondering if your app is available for Android operating system.
Yeah, so right now it's just for iOS, and this is mainly just because of the hardware requirements, because it uses the true depth camera on newer iOS devices. But definitely appreciate that like there are a lot of Android users out there who might want to use a similar product at some point. So we're definitely keeping that in mind as we build new features.
All right. All right, and then we got another two from Tiffany here. Will this work with my iPhone 6 Plus, and how does this compare to the Tobii eye gaze?
It'll only work with iPhone X and above devices. So basically, it's using the same technology that powers Face ID. So if you're able to kind of hold your phone up and unlock it with your face, then you should be able to use Hawkeye. If you're using a fingerprint scanner or don't have the kind of face unlock features, then the device probably doesn't support it. So it's the iPhone X, XS, XR, 11, and 11 Pro for the iPhones, and then there's also a new iPad Pro. Any of those with the true depth camera should work. And then compared to the kind of Tobii systems, the big differentiator is that Hawkeye is just software based instead of a hardware product. So you don't have to buy a camera from us. You don't have to set it up or anything like that. You just download our app. It uses the technology that's already built into the phone to do the eye tracking.
Right, and I'll echo that. I mean, if you have all the Tobii hardware and everything that you need, the Windows computer, all the extra add-ons that are necessary, once you're inside of it, it's just as accurate. It works very similar. So it's a really close comparison for those types of purposes.
All right, next question is from Jackie Gaddis, and I apologize if I mispronounced anyone's name. Have you looked into using external switches as a selection method?
We've tried that here and there. Don't think we ever ended up releasing a version that supports that to the App Store. It's still something that we're kind of experimenting with. But the way we've had it working internally, at least, is just using keyboard presses to trigger different selection events. So for most external switches, you can configure them to emulate a spacebar press or an enter key or something like that, and then the Hawkeye app can detect the enter action and then fire the click in the app. So we definitely have something working. It's just kind of trying to figure out how to support as many different hardware providers as possible, make sure we have wide support. So that's the only reason we haven't really shipped it so far. But if you're interested in testing it or anything, I'd be happy to send over an early version of it.
Yeah, and it does work for me. So I use my wheelchair as essentially a 4 switch. So I have hard puff, soft puff, hard zip, soft zip, just same way I drive my wheelchair. So I can use Hawkeye with my regular old switch control, which is essentially an external switch. And then I also mess around with using voice control in it too on iOS. So, you can use all 3 together and kind of just do your thing. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
All right, next 2 are comments. First one's from Tiffany saying, being able to set your own settings is amazing. Great job. And the second from Jay Beavers was, thank you, great demo, and he needed to leave early.
Thanks, Jay. Jay works at Microsoft. He actually works on their eye gaze team. So he was trying to get some inside info on that.
Yeah, we're gonna have some competition, I think.
That's right. That's great. That's good. The more people that are doing it means the market will grow, and then eventually, it ends up to more users. So it's good.
Exactly. I totally agree.
Yep.
All right. Next question comes from Daniel Frankel. Can Matt talk a bit more about the journey to build this? Does he have a team? Is he self-funded, or did he need investors to get going? And curious why this app is free. Seems like it provides value to many people, and the revenue can really help make the app even better.
So we have a very small team at the moment. Most of that's on the user testing side of things. So I'm the only one who's worked on the Hawkeye Access iOS app so far. But we do have, so I have one team member who's working on the user testing side of things, and definitely looking to potentially grow that team over time as well. And as far as kind of fundraising and charging for the app goes, we're self-funded so far. Again, that might change. But I think that, at least for us, we do charge for this user testing product we have as well, and that's where a lot of our revenue comes from. And because of that, it's not quite as necessary to charge for the accessibility product, and that lets us kind of get it into as many people's hands as possible. And one of the things we're really focused on is, improving our eye tracking and making sure it works as well as possible. And hearing from people and seeing how well it works for them. So having a free app on the store that provides real value for people and that people are really going to use, we can use that feedback to kind of improve our eye tracking, right? And that helps our business across the board. So it helps improve Hawkeye Access, it helps improve Hawkeye testing because our eye tracking is getting better. And it's just fun to be able to kind of send someone a link, right, and say, try out our app, and they try it, and then it actually works. And then, that's great for us, even if we're not directly making money from it.
Yeah, I know for me, whenever I get a new accessibility product, I hate waiting for it. It drives me insane. And when I do get it, it's like a 5-alarm fire trying to get someone up here to install it for me. So it's awful nice being able to do it this way. And I do have a follow-up question. So what other, what else do you think you could see eye gaze helping with in the disability field going forward?
One idea I've definitely been playing with is kind of expanding the feature set of the Hawkeye Access app. So right now it's mainly focused on web browsing, which is a pretty, gives you a lot of functionality, right? So you can do a lot of things with it already. And for most use cases we might build on, you could probably find a website that would also do it. But beyond that, I think it would be interesting to look at kind of communication tools. So that's obviously a huge feature for a lot of people with eye gaze. So, whether that's typing out on our eye control keyboard now on the iPad, we could look into, more specialized UIs where it helps you communicate on a day-to-day basis. Creative stuff is also pretty interesting for me. So I actually worked on a project a little while back that let you do head-controlled drawing. So as you rotate your head around, a little paintbrush would move around the screen and you can actually draw that way. So I think, again, like kind of expanding the use cases to more professional use cases, creative use cases, communication, all these sorts of things are definitely things we're looking at and could make Hawkeye Access an even better app.
Cool. One of the things that I'm really into is just being able to control my environment. So I know there are some apps that will pull all of your smart home stuff into one place. I think I understand it the way is that their app developers would have to format it so Hawkeye can work on it. What I'm imagining is someone who's nonverbal being able to open and close their door or do their thermostat, things like that would often require voice, through like Amazon Echo or something, you know what I mean? How would that all work?
Yes, that's definitely something we've thought about at this point. And as I mentioned before, like small team definitely means we have to focus as well. So it's definitely a lot of like thinking out these big problems and then figuring out the best way to tackle them one by one. So from what I've seen from the like home automation space, we wouldn't be able to kind of support every single hardware manufacturer, as you say. We would have to kind of individually integrate with them. But one really nice thing on iOS is there's this thing called HomeKit, which pulls together a bunch of different, home automation devices into one interface. And as an app developer, I believe we can actually access any of the HomeKit devices you have already paired with your iPhone. So we could provide a custom interface that would let you control any of those devices. So then it's just a matter of kind of figuring out, when to build that, how to do it so that it provides, the most useful features possible. But yeah, definitely something we're looking at.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, if you get into any of the Siri shortcuts, I suppose, yeah, that would be awesome for sure. All right, let's go back to questions.
Okay, next one came from Melissa Brock. Is there a click and drag option for the Mac head control mouse?
Yeah, there is. So we have kind of two ways of doing that, or I guess three even. So there's a little control strip that appears on your screen when you're using Hawkeye Access for the Mac that has kind of common click methods. So you got your left click, right click, double click, long click, all of those sorts of things. And one of those options is drag and hold. So then you'd kind of select that, you'd move your head over to the thing you want to drag, you'd smile to start dragging, move it to where you want to drop it, and then smile again to drop it. What's even cooler is we have a shortcut for that, which is to just smile and hold. So without even using the control panel, you can just move move the mouse using your head over the thing you'd like to select, smile and hold, it'll pick it up, then you just move over and smile again to drop it. So that's super easy to do.
Cool.
All right, next one is from Kevin Klepp. Is there a version of iPhone that Hawkeye works best on? I have the XR. Would it work better on a different version?
The newer iPhones that have the true depth camera should all work pretty much the same. There might be tiny speed differences between kind of the real top of the range newest devices and kind of the original iPhone X, but it's going to be pretty much unnoticeable as long as you have that true depth hardware. You should be set.
Cool. I got another question for you. So I know Tiffany said she had a 6S. What I'm envisioning is like a year from now when iPhone comes out with a newer phone, whatever they have now will be cheaper. You may not be able to answer this, but do you think iPhone's going to keep the high-end camera in all their phones so the price decreases over time?
Yeah, I think that they probably will. I mean, already, I'm sure you can get an iPhone X for a lot cheaper than for, a brand new iPhone, right? So I don't know the exact prices at this point, but, as these phones get newer, Apple does tend to keep the older ones, in the stores and that kind of thing, at a lower price. So I do think it'll get cheaper and cheaper over time. And it's just such a convenient way to unlock your phone as well that I don't see them going with anything else long term. Like I think this is their plan for like, getting into your iPhone, and if they have those cameras, then we can use them.
Cool. Another question you probably may not be able to answer. I should know this honestly, where would be the best place to get, let's say I have an iPhone 6S and I want to get one of these. Would you say eBay, or have you ever heard from anyone like, the best route to get a used iPhone X?
Yeah, so there are definitely a bunch of different options there. So there's the kind of true used products, if you will, which you might find on eBay. So that's just buying it, from someone who had the iPhone and wants to sell it for a little money. Those are going to be pretty cheap. In between that and buying a new phone, there's also a whole kind of refurbished program. So Apple does this themselves actually. So, if you upgrade your phone, one of the ways you can pay for it is by giving Apple your old phone. And then what Apple does is they kind of retrofit it, they clear all the software, they clean up the phone, they replace any parts that need replacing, and then they resell it as kind of a, properly refurbished phone at a discounted price over the original one. So that'll be less of a discount you get than buying it from someone on eBay, but you can also ensure that, Apple's checked it, they know that, it's ready to go, it wasn't, stolen or anything like that, which can be a risk on eBay. So that's always a nice option as well. And then you're also dealing with Apple as well, and they have things like Apple Care and things like that, where it's a more trustworthy buying process potentially.
Cool. And I'm going to send out a survey after this. So after you fill out the survey, I'll send out all the helpful links and all of the stuff that's necessary to follow up on these things. So 3 more questions.
All right, next one's from Ian Burkhart. Can this be used in conjunction with VoiceOver?
We don't kind of directly integrate with a lot of the iOS accessibility features. A lot of those are kind of system-wide controls where developers only have kind of minimal amount of influence they can have over those things, right? But it should work fine with those. So you could use VoiceOver or something like that, or voice control or switch control on iOS or anything like that to kind of open the Hawkeye Access app. And then once you're in the app, then you can use the eye control. And if you want to switch to another app, then you kind of jump back to the more traditional iOS switch control or something, or whatever accessibility feature you're using.
Yeah, well, switch control and voice control do work once you're in the Hawkeye app, at least for me.
Yep.
All right, next one is from Brenda Gutierrez. Is there a price to use Hawkeye?
Access is totally free right now. You can just download off the App Store and get set up. Definitely free to try at this point.
Yep, and what we're giving away is the user testing stuff, kind of latest and greatest. So thank you very much, Matt.
I think that kind of actually bounces into the next question from Nancy Bolden. Remind me what subscription or license that you were going to give away for the 6-month trial.
The 6-month trial is for Hawkeye testing, which is kind of the other part of our business. So Hawkeye testing is mainly for conducting eye tracking tests on products. So if you're a designer or you're a researcher or you're a marketer, you want to see where people look in your website or in a prototype or in an app or something like that. you can use Hawkeye testing to conduct eye tracking tests on it. You get back like a screen recording and a heat map kind of showing where the user looks. And that's definitely kind of a separate thing to Hawkeye Access, which is all about controlling your device. But given that Hawkeye Access is free, we still wanted to give something away. And
Yeah.
it might be fun to play around with, if nothing else. So
Yeah, good call. And a mount, because got to make sure your phone's mounted.
yeah.
All right, and so far our last question now is from Tiffany Fox. She's asking, I can purchase refurbished from Apple on eBay. How do I know if it's Apple legit?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think I would guess there's some sort of kind of Apple eBay storefront, if there is one. So I believe they do this on Amazon, where there's like a special Apple page on Amazon that has kind of official Apple branding and stuff. So that's probably what I would check for on eBay. I can't say I'm 100% sure, but if the username or something, it looks anything other than kind of Apple with probably some sort of like check mark or a star or like verified seller or something like that, it's probably not the real deal.
Tiffany, shoot me a message and I'll take a look with you. I can't promise that my guarantee is a guarantee, but I'll try to at least give it a second pair of eyes. All right, and that's going to do it. Well, thank you very, very much, Matt. I can't thank you enough for spending this time. Amazing app. I love it. I think it's going to help so many people, and I can't thank you enough. And then also thank you to everyone who joined us. We'll go ahead and give the free mount and the Hawkeye subscription to Brenda. She's been a loyal webinar viewer, so thank you for your support, Brenda. We will connect a little bit later on. And then, so upcoming events this Thursday, we have Nathaniel Swenson from Canova Robotics talking about how we can control robotic arms to do anything like fill up a glass of water, make a cup of coffee, all using your wheelchair. And then the following Tuesday, we have an interesting one. This one won't be quite as much demonstration, but we have a gentleman named R.C. Carter from Microsoft talking about independent voting, essentially how I can roll into a voting booth and vote myself without the help of anyone else. So thank you all for being here. I hope to see you all Thursday. Have a great day.